By the end of 1971, India's armed forces were pretty much prepared for the operations that were going to unfold, both in East Pakistan and West Pakistan. Plans had been made, rehearsals had been carried out. India had been engaging and training the Mukti Bahini and other guerrilla elements that were operating in East Pakistan, and therefore adding to the distraction that the Pakistan army was facing in East Pakistan. In East Pakistan, Pakistan had traditionally kept very few troops because the Pakistani strategic thought was that they will have so much of firepower and troops facing India on India's western border along Punjab, Kashmir and Rajasthan that India would not have the resources to divert towards any military activity in East Pakistan. But Indian commanders were conscious of that and therefore had planned accordingly. The second thing was that Mrs. Gandhi's trips abroad were quite unsuccessful when it came to trying to get America to understand India's point of view. The American government, led by Nixon and advised by Henry Kissinger, were more keen on keeping Pakistan humored. Pakistan historically had been America's military ally since the 50s because of SEATO, CENTO and giving bases to America to survey areas north of Pakistan with U-2 flights, but also had opened a route for Kissinger to engage with the Chinese regime, and America wanted to start what later became known as ping-pong diplomacy. But most importantly for India, it was Russia that decided to come on India's side. Historically in the past, and historically means post-1947, Russia had not entirely been on board with India. In the 1965 war, the Russians were waiting and watching, sometimes in support of Pakistan, sometimes taking a neutral stance. But in 71, they came clearly on India's side, thanks to Mrs. Gandhi's diplomatic efforts, backed by her foreign minister, Sardar Swaran Singh. But what really tipped the balance in India's favor was the alacrity and decisiveness of India's military commanders. Now, Mrs. Gandhi knew from the experience of her father that meddling in matters military could be disastrous, as we saw in the 1962 Sino-Indian conflict. So she left the entire military planning to military commanders. There was not just Manekshaw, who was the Indian Army chief, but with him, he had certain military commanders that even today are recognized as some of our finest field commanders, one of them being General Sagat Singh in the eastern sector. And in the Navy, you had a chief in the form of Admiral Nanda, who not only pounded the hell out of Karachi once war started, but took the bold decision of shifting the aircraft carrier group from the Arabian Sea to the Bay of Bengal, much against opposition within naval circles. But this was to be decisive when later on the Americans sent their 7th Fleet to threaten Indian operations in East Pakistan. And the air chief was a man of also great enterprise. Air Chief Marshal P.C. Lal understood the need for providing the military all the necessary support and the cohesiveness to achieve complete air superiority, and therefore the 2 air commands that were actually responsible for the Eastern Theatre were brought under one advanced headquarters into Calcutta. And it was not Shillong that was calling the shots, nor Allahabad, but an advanced headquarters which was engaging effectively with Eastern Command headquarters, where though General Jasjit Singh Arora was the army commander, the man on the hot seat was General J.F.R. Jacob, the Chief of Staff of Eastern Command, who can rightly be credited for much of the planning and the blitzkrieg that eventually unfolded in East Pakistan. So what happened in the conflict? We were fully prepared, and though the war officially started on the night of 3rd, 4th December, with Pakistan deciding to attack a number of Indian airfields on India's western front from Jammu, Agra, Jodhpur and several other airfields, it was actually a few days before 3rd, 4th December that the war had started without it being declared. One or two actions are noteworthy. The fierce battles that took place around Hilli in the border of East Pakistan with India are the stuff of legend. Also, there was another battle at Garibpur, where again lots of casualties were incurred. But the Indian forces, historical records show that from 21st November onwards, wouldn't just go in, hit, probe and come back, but from 21st November onwards, they were ready to march full steam ahead for the race to Dhaka. What happened thereafter? There were multiple operations taking place in both India's Eastern Front and Western Front. It showed India was capable of fighting a two-front war, although there were fears that the Chinese may intervene in Pakistan's favor. But what some smart people knew, that the war actually was getting to unfold by the end of November. And if the experience of 1962 was to be kept in mind, then the Chinese pulled back in the 1962 campaign after 19th November. And so therefore, by 21st November, we were ready to go in. Why did the Chinese pull back? Because the snows were blocking the passes on the Himalayas, so the Chinese troops would get sunk in the snow, so they didn't want to get engaged there. Now, this was a factor that the Indian commanders in the east, particularly General Sagat Singh and also General Raina, who were commanding the two corps, there were actually 3 Indian corps that were going in against 1 corps of Pakistan. Just for your knowledge, a battalion into 3 is a brigade into 3 is a division into 2 is a corps, and 2 or 3 corps make a command. So a corps is a very large fighting formation, something in the range of 40 to 60,000 troops, backed with air power and backed with naval power. Let us not forget the Indian Navy. They played a dramatic role in the 71 war, because the Indian Navy first blockaded East Pakistan, so no food resources could come to the beleaguered and cornered Pakistan army in East Pakistan. Second, the Air Force bombed them to smithereens, and soon the skies were clear and there were no Pakistani aircrafts on the sky. And that is when the Indian Army was making a rush to Dhaka. Now, Manik Shaw's attention was largely focused on the Western Front for 2-3 reasons. One, that in the 65 war, he was the Eastern Army commander. There was not much action that took place there, a brigade level action. So this time he again saw the major operations probably unfolding on the Western Front. The second thing was that the Manik Shaw, though a war hero from World War II, he had a military cross in Burma, he hadn't been a field commander in any of India's wars since independence. 47-48, he was DMO. 62, he came as GOC 4 Corps. 65, he was commanding Eastern Command. So when he was army chief here, he let the wisdom of the ground commanders prevail. And that was a good thing. And the ground commanders therefore improvised and moved rapidly towards Dhaka. They crossed the Meghna River in an operation which shocked the Pakistanis. The Pakistanis believed that India would try and take over every major garrison or township that surrounded the area of East Pakistan. But India smartly decided to follow a simple military dictum that when you face opposition and you can't make headway, bypass. And they started rushing to Dhaka. Nobody really quite expected Dhaka to fall in 2 weeks. There was a heli lift that was taking place. The first heli-borne operation was initiated by General Sagat Singh with the able Group Captain Chandan Singh, who became one of the Air Force's big heroes, taking on bold operations. There were amphibious operations that were launched by PT-76 tanks through the Meghna River. Bridges were made, and to the shock of Pakistan, India's 50 Independent Para Brigade did an airdrop at Tangail near Dhaka. Now, Pakistanis thought a brigade has been dropped, but actually only a battalion was dropped. That was 2 paras. What was happening on the Western Front? The Pakistanis' attempt to get to Jodhpur, Jaisalmer were foiled by a dramatic operation that unfolded at Longewala ahead of Barmer, Jaisalmer. And that, the credit goes initially to Major Kuldeep Chandpuri, who got a Mahavir Chakra. For about 110 men, he held off one whole night against 4,000 plus men. I mean, never in the annals of military history has a defensive operation as bold as this been implemented. And subsequently, the next morning, the Air Force launched a number of airstrikes because Pakistani tanks were waiting all around Longewala to make a breakthrough. And at that stage, they made what came to be known as the graveyard of Pakistani tanks in Longewala. You can still go and see them near Jaisalmer. There was another operation that India decided to unfold, and that was the strike core operation from Shakhargarh Bulge, because they expected Pakistan to do something fierce there and try and cut off Punjab from Jammu Kashmir and therefore then attack Kashmir. But the operations in Shakhargarh and beyond, the Basantar Nadi operation and Jarpal Basantar, was spectacular in a sense. It saw fierce action and probably the largest collection of gallantry awards being given out both by Indians and Pakistanis. 2 Paramvir Chakras were given out in that action, and at the same time there was an Indian battalion commander who wrote the citation of a Pakistani battalion commander, based on which Lieutenant Colonel Akram Raja of 35 Frontier Force got the Hilalul Jurrat. But what finally tipped the balance and the operations couldn't unfold any further from the bridgehead at Shakhargarh was when Sam Manekshaw picked up the phone and told General Jacob, who he knew from the past, he says, "Jake, go and get a surrender." So order as an order. So General Jacob took a helicopter flight, bounced his way through 1 or 2 airfields and landed up in Dhaka. And that is when he gave Niazi 3 times the chance to say yes or no to his offer. He says, "If you don't surrender, we'll butcher you like dogs." On the 3rd occasion, Niazi head is hung down and started crying. Later, Niazi was asked by the Hamidur Rahman Commission report that why did you surrender when you had 26,000 troops with you in Dhaka? He said Jacob only had 2,700 troops, the paratroopers and some other elements that had come in. Niazi admitted, "Jacob bluffed me." The surrender was the largest surrender that was eventually organized on Dhaka racecourse, but that is the matter of another story.